Alara was a young girl who had lost her parents. She was an orphan, and that meant she had no one to speak for her or defend her. She lived with her uncle, Chief Silas, who only cared about money and business. One day, he called her to the living room of his big house. He spoke in a cold voice, like he was reading numbers from a calculator. "You will marry Kaylin," he said. "This marriage will keep my business deal with Chief Alistair safe." Alara wanted to say something, but she knew it was useless. No one ever asked for her opinion. She had no dowry, no power, and no one to protect her. So she just nodded, because nodding was safer than asking questions. Deep inside, her heart felt heavy. She was going to marry a stranger. Not because she wanted to, not because she loved him, but because her uncle told her to. On the wedding day, Alara stood alone in a small side room of the cathedral. She wore a borrowed veil that shook in her nervous hands. She had no bridesmaids, no family smiling beside her. Her uncle was busy whispering about contracts with Chief Alistair in another pew. The saints painted on the stained glass windows seemed to look away, as if even they were ashamed of what was happening. The groom, Kaylin, whom everyone called Kaylin, arrived late, smelling of champagne. He looked at Alara only for a second, just enough to make sure she was there, then winked at his laughing friends standing at the back. The organist was confused, fumbling with the music, but finally began playing. When the priest asked, "Does anyone know why these two should not be married?" There was silence. And then Alara whispered, I do." Gasps filled the church. Her uncle's fingers dug into her arm. "You will not ruin my business," he hissed. Alara grew pale and quiet again. The priest, red with confusion, continued the ceremony. The vows felt like business papers, not love. Outside, people threw confetti. A photographer begged her to smile, but the picture she gave looked like a hostage photo. Kaylin smiled for everyone, but he was only looking at his reflection in the limousine window. When they reached his house on Victoria Island, the big white house looked cold and empty. He threw a red silk nightgown on the bed. "Wear something respectable tomorrow," he said. "I can't introduce you to people if you look like Charity." Alara folded the gown carefully, though it hurt her pride. Day after day, her new life became sad. If the food tasted a little different, he slammed his fork down. If her dress wasn't perfect, he ripped it off her. If she tried to call someone kind, he broke her phone. Each time, she said sorry. But her voice grew smaller and smaller, until even her own name felt strange to her. Lonely, she began writing in a diary. She wrote about the saints who watched her wedding but did not stop it. She wrote about the veil that fluttered like a frightened bird. She wrote about her husband, who called her asset in public but baggage in private. She ended one entry with words she was too afraid to speak. "I have married an empty space that pretends to be a man." Every night, Kaylin locked all the windows and doors, saying it was for security. But Alara felt like a prisoner. Kaylin lived by routines. On Mondays, he jogged and then complained that the bathroom smelled too Alistair 9. On Tuesdays, he ate her food but still threw it away, calling it tasteless or too spicy. On Wednesdays, he stayed out all night. On Thursdays, he came back smelling of perfume that wasn't hers. On Fridays, he came home drunk and cruel, throwing insults at her. In her diary, she marked the days. June 3rd. He shouted because a glass had fingerprints. June 10th. He laughed that her voice could curdle milk. June 24th. He asked if orphans even know how to love. At the bottom of each page, she wrote one question. What is the price of silence? She never dared to answer. One stormy Tuesday, while Kaylin was showering, she quickly called her uncle. "Uncle, it's me, Alara," she whispered. "Kaylin hurts me. I think I may die here." Her uncle sighed. "A woman must endure, child. Men test their wives. This marriage is worth millions." "But he locks me in. He hits me." Her uncle's voice grew sharp. "Do not embarrass me with drama. Be grateful your husband provides." And he hung up. Alara stared at the phone. She wanted it to say sorry, but it was silent. That Friday night, Kaylin came home drunk, smelling of lipstick that wasn't hers. Alara waited and begged softly. "Please, I do not ask for love. I only ask for safety. Use protection, so you don't kill us both." He stared at her and laughed. "You? A gutter rat? Daring to advise me? Then his hand flew. The first slap spun her. The second made her ear ring. His fists rained on her while the chandelier above jingled like it was clapping for the cruelty. When he finally stopped, he threw her against the staircase. She tasted blood in her mouth. At dawn, she gathered her strength, wore a simple wrapper, and slipped out barefoot. The stones cut her feet, but she kept walking. Rain poured down, heavy and wild. She reached her uncle's house and begged the guards. "Tell him Alara is here." At last, Chief Silas came out under an umbrella, wearing silk pajamas. "Go home, neighbors will talk," he said coldly. "Uncle, please, just one night. I fear he will kill me." "That is a wife's burden," he snapped. "Besides, you chose him." The umbrella kept him dry while rain drenched her. Then the gates closed. Alara walked back in the rain until morning. She sat on the welcome mat of her own house, too weak to climb the wall. At sunrise, the door opened. Kalen stepped out, talking on the phone about business. He looked down at her like she was trash. "You look terrible. Clean yourself before the neighbors see." He stepped over her and left. She stayed there, lying weakly on the mat, watching the pink sky turn blue. For the first time, she wondered if death might feel kinder than living like this. Then a little stray kitten walked up to her and meowed. She stroked its wet fur and whispered, "We are both unwanted, aren't we?" The kitten purred softly. It was a small sound, but it showed that gentleness could still live even after cruelty. Inside the house, 15 windows caught the morning sun. But for Alara, morning did not mean freedom. It meant she had to keep living in a place where escape seemed impossible. She knew that if she ever wanted to be free, she needed more than courage. She needed a door she had not yet imagined. Alara never thought marriage would teach her about fear. But in Kalen's house, even ordinary things carried threats. She learned to flinch at the sound of ice clinking in a glass. She memorized the sound of his footsteps, light when he was sober, heavy and scary when he was drunk. She learned when to hold her breath, and when to pretend she was asleep. But the fear she felt now was not about bruises or broken plates. It was about sickness. One morning, as she gathered Kalen's dirty clothes, something fell out of his trouser pocket, a crumpled paper. It was a pharmacy receipt. Alara picked it up and read the words. The medicines were not vitamins. They were antikalentics, used to treat sicknesses she had heard about long ago in the orphanage, sicknesses that came from unsafe love. Her hands shook. She sat on the bed for a long time with the paper in her hand. She didn't know whether to cry, confront him, or pray. At last, she chose to pray. Kneeling beside the bed, she whispered, "God, I don't know what to do, but I don't want to die." That evening, she cooked Kalen's favorite foods, grilled turkey wings, yam porridge, and peppered snails. The kitchen filled with sweet smells. She even changed into a yellow wrapper with flowers on it, one of the few clothes he had not thrown away. Kalen came home at 10:40 p.m. He was a little drunk. His shirt was half open, and he smelled of whiskey and another woman's perfume. Alara still greeted him kindly and helped him with his jacket. He grunted, threw his keys on the table and sat down. When he tasted the food, he nodded. "Not bad. You didn't spoil it today." Alara smiled a little. After he finished eating, she gave him a glass of water and sat across from him. Her hands were twisted together in her lap. Her voice was soft as she said, "Kalen, can we talk?" He looked up, already annoyed. "About what?" "I know you see other women," she said carefully. "I'm not here to fight. I just want us to be safe. I found the pharmacy receipt. You're taking medicine for something. Please use protection so we don't hurt each other." There was silence. Then Kalen laughed, sharp and cruel. "You, a gutter girl, telling me about protection." He stood up angrily, shoving his chair. "Who do you think you are?" "I'm your wife," she whispered, tears falling. "And I don't want to die. That's all I'm asking." His eyes grew dark. Ungrateful woman. The slap came fast and hard across her cheek. She fell to the floor. The taste of blood filled her mouth. Then he kicked her in the ribs, dragged her up by the wrist and shouted, "You think you are my equal now?" She begged him to stop, shielding her face with her arms. But Kalen was blind with anger. He beat her again and again. Finally, he threw her across the living room like trash and stormed upstairs. Alara lay there for hours. She could not move. The pain was in her body and in her heart. She felt broken and worthless. She thought of her parents, who had died long ago, and wondered what they would say if they saw her like this. Would they ask her why she stayed? At last, she crawled to the bathroom. She washed her wounds with cold water, biting a towel to stop from screaming. Looking in the mirror, one eye swollen shut, lips bleeding, she whispered, "Is this what marriage means?" She could not sleep. She curled in a corner, hugging her knees until morning. Beside her was her diary. With shaking hands she wrote, "He told me I was lucky to have him, but luck should not feel like dying slowly. I asked for a condom. I got beaten. This house has no windows, only mirrors. And in them I see a stranger." The next day her ribs still hurt. Her face ached. Kaylin left early, without saying sorry. He slammed the door as always. By afternoon, Alara sat with a warm towel on her cheek. Suddenly the doorbell rang. She looked through the curtain and gasped. It was Chief Alistair, Kaylin's father. She opened the door with shaking hands. "Good afternoon, Daddy," she said. His eyes narrowed. "What happened to your face?" "Nothing, sir," she whispered. "Don't lie to me," he said sternly. "Who did this?" Tears filled her eyes. He pressed her gently. "Talk to me, Alara." And at last she told him everything. The insults, the beatings, the cheating, the fear. She told him all except the silence inside her heart, which hurt most of all. Chief Alistair stood still, shocked. Finally, he sighed deeply. "Thank you for telling me. You've done nothing wrong." Then he left. That evening, Kaylin came home early. His eyes were stormy. "You reported me to my father?" he shouted. "I didn't ask him to punish you," she said softly. He asked, and I only answered. Kaylin's chest rose and fell with anger. He did not hit her that day, but his silence in the next few days was heavy like a stone. He barely spoke, left early, came home late. He stayed in the guest room, making noises. Something was coming. Alara felt it. And then it happened. It was a rainy Saturday. The roof drummed with the storm. Alara was stirring soup when Kaylin called her. She walked to the living room. There, in the center, was her old Ghana bag, the one she brought after the wedding. Beside it lay her oldest, tattered clothes. "What's this?" she asked. "You're leaving," Kaylin said flatly. "You don't belong here anymore." Her eyes widened. "What? Where will I go?" "That's not my problem," he snapped. "Take only what you came with." He stuffed the bag with her ragged wrappers, old slippers, and torn gowns. None of the clothes he had bought her were included. He dragged her outside into the pouring rain. "Move," he barked. She begged, but he pulled her into the car. For 30 minutes they drove through Lagos, until they stopped near a garbage dump. The place stank of trash. Rats ran around. Children scavenged. Kaylin yanked her out. "This is where you belong. Trash among trash." He threw her bag beside her and sped away. Alara sat in the mud, soaked and shivering. For the first time, she truly knew what it meant to be discarded. She tried to stand, but pain shot through her body. She cried quietly. Curling against old tires, she whispered, "God, I don't have strength anymore." Then headlights shone through the rain. A car stopped. A tall man in a spotless white outfit stepped out, holding an umbrella. He came close and looked at her kindly. "Young lady," he said gently, "who did this to you?" Alara tried to speak, but no words came. He crouched beside her, steadying her with his arm. "I don't know what you've done," he said softly, "but no one deserves to be thrown away like this. No one." He turned to his driver. "Open the back door." Then to Alara, "You're coming home with me." She sat in the warm car, drenched, broken, but for the first time in a long time safe. No shouting. No beating. Only kindness. Zivi looked at the girl sitting quietly in the back seat. "You don't need to explain anything now," he said kindly. "Let's get you dry and give you some food." The girl, Alara, turned her face toward the window. A small tear rolled down her cheek. It wasn't from pain this time, but from a strange new feeling. She felt safe for the first time in a long time. The car finally stopped in front of a big mansion in Aoi. The house was huge, with tall white walls, trimmed hedges, and bright lights shining like halos. Slowly the big gates opened. Inside was a beautiful modern house with shining marble steps, tall white columns, and a garden that looked like something from a dream. Alara's eyes widened. This can't be real, she thought. She expected the guards to stop the car and say, "She's dirty, sir. Don't bring her inside." But instead, the guards bowed their heads respectfully as the car passed. At the door, a kind woman named Mama Yara, who was in her 50s, came forward. She had warm, motherly eyes and a big smile. But when she saw Alara, she gasped. "Jizu, Yara, what happened to her?" she asked. "She was thrown out like garbage," Zivi said softly, though anger burned in his voice. "Please help her. Give her food, a bath, and a safe place to sleep." "Yes, sir," Mama Yara said quickly. She gently took Alara's hand and led her inside. Zivi watched as she walked upstairs. "You're safe now," he told her. "No one will hurt you here." That night, Alara had her first real bath in weeks. Mama Yara filled a big tub with warm water. She hummed soft Yoruba hymns while she helped Alara wash. Afterward, she gave her a soft cotton nightgown and led her into a guest room. The room was bigger than the small duplex where Alara used to live. The bed was high, soft, and warm. The air smelled of lavender and clean sheets. She couldn't believe that all of this was happening on the same day. On the nightstand sat a bowl of jollof rice, fried plantain, and grilled chicken. The smell made Alara's stomach growl, but she hesitated. "Eat," Mama Yara urged. "Yara said you must eat something." Alara nodded slowly, picked up the spoon, and took her first bite. Then she began to cry. She hadn't cried when Kaylin slapped her. She hadn't cried when her uncle slammed the gate in her face. She hadn't even cried when she was thrown away like rubbish. But now, in a quiet room filled with peace, with warm food in her mouth and kind eyes watching her, she broke down. She cried, and every sob felt like poison leaving her body. Mama Yara didn't try to stop her. She just held her hand and sat with her until Alara finally slept. The next morning, Zivi came to check on her. She was sitting by the window, staring out at the garden. "Did you sleep well?" he asked gently. "Yes, thank you," she whispered. "Are you ready to talk?" he asked. She nodded. Tears filled her eyes as she told him everything. How she was forced into marriage like a pawn in a business deal, how she faced insults and abuse, how she was locked away in fear. She told him how she was finally thrown out into the streets, how her uncle refused to help, and how she lived each day like a ghost until even that ghost was discarded. Zivi listened carefully. He did not interrupt. He did not judge. He did not tell her she should have left earlier. He simply listened, his eyes full of compassion and respect. When she finished, she lowered her head. "I must sound weak to you," she said softly, "but I didn't have anywhere else to go." "No," Zivi said, shaking his head. "You sound like a woman who survived hell. That is not weakness, Shola. That is strength." He stood up and began pacing slowly. "My whole business was built on timing, knowing when to act, when to walk away. But what I saw yesterday shook me. A woman treated like trash in a country that should know better." Alara wiped her eyes. "Thank you for saving me." "I didn't save you," Zivi said quietly. "I just saw a treasure in the wrong place. I want to help you, not out of pity, but because you deserve better. Your story is not over." Later that day, Zivi called his lawyer. "I want you to look into the man who did this to her," he said. "His name is Bof. Check the house he lives in. If the law allows it, we'll act. But I don't want this to end in silence." When Alara heard about it, she shook her head. "No," she whispered. "I don't want revenge. I just want peace. Let him live his life, and I will live mine." Zivi was amazed. In a world where people loved revenge, here was a woman who had every reason to be bitter. Yet she chose forgiveness. "I've never met anyone like you," he said softly. And in that moment, he made a silent promise. Whatever it took, he would give her the life she had been denied, not out of charity, but out of love and justice. One morning, Zivi walked out onto his balcony and froze. Alara was in the driveway, kneeling beside his black Lexus, scrubbing the rims. She wore one of Mama Yara's oversized wrappers, her natural hair tied up in a scarf. A bucket of soapy water stood nearby. She hadn't noticed him. She was humming. After all she had been through, she was still humming. He walked down to her slowly. Shola, what are you doing? She jumped in surprise, almost spilling the water. Oh, good morning, sir. I'm just washing the car. You shouldn't be out here washing cars. You are not a maid, Zivi said. She stood up and wiped her wet hands. I know. I'm not doing it because I must. I'm doing it because I'm grateful. Work makes me feel alive. Rest doesn't fill my heart the way work does. Zivi looked at her deeply. There was still pain in her eyes, but there was also strength, a quiet power that no beating could erase. All right, he said. But next time let the staff handle it. You've done enough. She nodded. Yes, sir. That afternoon, Alara cooked him lunch. She served vegetable soup, pounded yam and grilled tilapia. I wasn't sure if you like spicy food, she said nervously. He took a bite. His eyes widened. Then he leaned back amazed. This is incredible. She blushed. Thank you. Mama Yara taught you, he asked. No, she said softly. I used to cook for him. Zivi didn't need to ask who him was. And he still treated you badly? She shrugged. When someone doesn't value you, it doesn't matter what you do. A heavy silence fell. Then Zivi said, I value this. And I value you. Her eyes widened. He meant every word. Evenings in the garden became their special time. They sat together, watching the sunset, sipping zobo. Zivi told her stories of his childhood, how he once sold brake pads in Annika, how he built his first business, how losing his mother at 16 made him close his heart. I never let anyone in after that, he admitted. Business was my shield. And now, she asked quietly. Now I see healing doesn't come from walls, he said. It comes from people. I'm still broken, she whispered. No, he replied gently. You are mending. The way you still choose kindness after all that pain, that is true strength. She lowered her head. I never thought I'd feel peace again. And I want you to have more than peace, Zivi said. I want you to have joy. Days turned into weeks. Alara watered the flowers, polished the furniture, laughed with Mama Yara, and read books from the study. Every evening, Zivi joined her on the balcony by the koi pond. They talked about everything: politics, music, pain, soup recipes, forgiveness. Slowly, something grew between them. It wasn't pity. It wasn't obligation. It was love. On the 24th day, over breakfast under the gazebo, Zivi could no longer hide it. Alara, he said seriously, I have something to tell you. Please don't feel pressured. I just need to be honest. Her heart beat fast. I never planned this, he continued. But you've changed me. You remind me of who I was before money and power took over. You bring peace to my life. You've shown me that strength is not always loud, it is steady. He pulled out a small velvet box and opened it. Inside was a simple, beautiful gold ring. Will you let me build a new future with you? Her hands flew to her mouth. You want to marry me? Yes. Not because I rescued you, but because I respect you. Because I love you. Tears filled her eyes. Zivi, I've been treated like trash for so long. I don't even know how to feel worthy. He knelt before her and took her hand. Then let me remind you every day. She cried freely now. Yes, she whispered. Yes, he repeated, smiling. Yes, I will marry you. Less than a month after being thrown out like garbage, Alara became the bride of one of the most powerful men in Nigeria. There were no reporters, no socialites, no loud parties. Just a quiet wedding by the sea. A small chapel. A string quartet. Mama Yara crying happy tears. A little barefoot flower girl from an orphanage tossing rose petals as Alara walked down the aisle. And Zivi stood waiting at the altar, his heart bursting. Not because of what she had suffered, but because of what she had become. His wife. His miracle. His treasure risen from the dust. Even after the wedding, Alara sometimes paused in front of the mirror, her fingers brushing the scar near her eye. The sadness showed that a part of her still lived in that painful house. Zivi saw it. And in his heart he knew, something had to be done. Not for revenge, but to help her heal fully. Because now, she was not just a survivor. She was his wife. His treasure. His joy. Zivi called his personal lawyer. I want to buy a house, he said quietly. A duplex in Victoria Island. Find out who owns Bofi's building. 2 days later, The lawyer came back with the papers. It belongs to an old Lebanese man, the lawyer said. He wants to sell it privately. He is ready to give it away for the right price. Zivi didn't think twice. Offer him the full price, he said, and put the house in Alera's name. The sale was finished in only a few days. 2 weeks later, Kalen heard a knock on his door. The house manager stood there, holding an envelope. We've been told to give you a notice, the man said. This house has been sold. You have 30 days to leave. The new landlord wants to take over. Kalen got angry. What nonsense is this? Sold to who? The new owner asked for privacy, sir, the manager replied. But she is ready to meet you about the moving date. Kalen's heart started to beat fast. A meeting was arranged. Kalen arrived late to the meeting. He looked tired, his clothes were messy, and he smelled of beer. Things had been going badly for him. He had lost his good job in his father's company. His friends had left him. He had no money. He walked into the room and froze. Sitting at the table was Alera. She wore a white blouse and a green skirt. She looked calm and strong, like a queen. Nothing like the woman he had once thrown into the mud. You're the new landlord? Kalen whispered. Yes, Alera nodded. Kalen couldn't believe it. But how? Alera didn't explain. Instead, she pushed the eviction paper toward him. You have 30 days to leave. But I'm giving you 2 weeks. Kalen clenched his jaw. You're doing this to disgrace me, right? To get back at me. Alera looked at him for a long moment. Then she said softly, If I wanted revenge, I wouldn't be sitting here. I'm only doing what you once taught me. To stop staying where I'm not respected. Kalen looked down. For once, he had no words. As he turned to leave, Alera added, Kalen, I forgive you, but your cruelty has no place in my life anymore. Kalen staggered outside like a man in a bad dream. His house, his power, even her silence. Everything was gone. That night he went to his father's mansion at Banana Island. The guard called Chief Alistair, Kalen's father. The old man came out, arms folded, disappointment clear on his face. Daddy, Kalen began. Go home. Chief Alistair cut him off. I don't have a home, Kalen whispered. You had one. But you destroyed it, his father replied. You humiliated a woman who only wanted respect. She forgave you, but you still treated her like trash. Your wickedness ruined you. You are no longer welcome here. And with that, the gate closed. No shouting, no fighting, just silence. That night, Kalen slept in a broken-down guest house. No electricity, no fan, only rats in the ceiling. He lay awake, staring at the cracked roof, hearing Alera's words again and again. I don't want revenge. I just want peace. Meanwhile, across the city, Alera was standing on a stage in her new home, the Akoi Mansion. Fairy lights shined above, and the garden was full of guests. Women, friends, donors, and survivors. Beside her stood Zivi, his hand gently on her back. A big banner hung behind her. Grand opening of Amara Haven, a shelter for women in crisis. Alera took the microphone and spoke with a steady voice. There was a time when I thought suffering in silence made me a good woman. That being beaten, insulted, and abandoned was my cross to carry. But I've learned something. No one deserves to be treated like garbage. Women are not property. We are not disposable. And that is why this home exists. So no woman will ever again sleep outside in the rain, wondering if she matters. The crowd clapped loudly. Zivi kissed her forehead. Alera cut the ribbon. Laughter, tears, and healing filled the air. Later that evening, as they sat in the quiet garden, Zivi said, You changed everything. No, Alera smiled. I just refused to stay broken. Zivi knew then he had married not a victim, but a woman who rose from the ashes and turned her pain into light. Far away, Kalen sat by a BRT bus terminal, watching the event on a borrowed phone. His name wasn't mentioned, but the shame was enough. 6 months later, the High Court of Lagos granted Alera an uncontested divorce. Kalen didn't show up. He didn't send a lawyer. He didn't even respond. The judge said, You are now free. Alera smiled. Not a smile of victory, but of peace. She had made it out alive. Outside, Zivi was waiting. It's done, she whispered. Yes, he said, holding her hand. Now we begin again. Alara donated the money from the duplex to start a training center for women escaping abuse. They could learn tailoring, baking, hairdressing, and even technology. One of the first women helped was Saskia, a former taxi driver who had lost everything after leaving an abusive husband. Now Saskia was the official driver for Amara Haven, picking up women who had nowhere to go, just like Alara once was. Newspapers called it, From Beaten to Builder, how one woman's pain sparked a movement. But Alara didn't give interviews. Her work spoke for itself. In Suralire, Kalen sat outside a dirty roadside bar, drinking cheap palm wine. His shoes were ruined, his phone disconnected, his life broken. When he saw a newspaper about Zivi and Alara opening a second shelter in Abuja, he turned his eyes away. Regret whispered, "You could have had a queen. You treated her like dust." One Saturday, Alara returned to her old street, not as the rejected wife, but as a guest of honor. She spoke to young girls, some with bruises, others with sad eyes. "I was once told that obedience meant silence," she said. "But today I stand here not because I obeyed cruelty, but because I walked away from it." The girls clapped, some cried. Alara smiled, not just because she was free, but because she had found a purpose in her pain. Moral lesson: never let anyone decide your worth through cruelty. What the world throws away, grace can restore. True strength is not in staying in abuse, but in rising above it and using your pain to protect and help others. If you liked this story, please share it. And don't forget, another powerful and life-changing story is coming soon. Stay tuned.